Well, hello everyone, this is Luke Germain and I'm sitting here with Chris Rawlins and we are going to discuss and talk about his upcoming, almost ready, almost upcoming, almost released, very close to being released, which you'll shortly be able to buy, book called Drawing Thoughts. All joking aside, it is on its way. I've read it already, I think it's great, I'm sure you're going to really enjoy it. This interview and sort of discussion is just a conversation between myself and Chris. Hopefully it will be interesting and hopefully I'll keep it on track. So that's my little introduction and now I'll hand it over to the man himself. Chris, say hello to everyone.
Hello, it's Chris. Sounding strange because it's just voice recorder.
And there's Chris. So I think first things first, I've watched the videos on the website and I've read the contents and I've also been lucky enough to see this book sort of in its early stages, and it's quite exciting, but something that perhaps isn't immediately clear is the fact that the content in this book is what I would consider to be offbeat solutions to the really classic premise of the drawing duplication. So many times, especially now in mentalism, we see a product being released and it kind of looks like it's the same old, you know, the sort of Emperor's New Clothes and all of that. Whereas in this particular collection of ideas, you're looking at a really classic premise but from a really different perspective, and I found that really interesting. So maybe without, obviously I don't want you to give away any big secrets or anything like that,
yeah.
But maybe just talk a little bit about what the core concept is here. Like if there's one thing you want people to walk away from with this, what is it?
So one of the things in the book is called the IDD. I'm terrible at naming things that I call
I
it.
often do the same thing, yeah. I often either call it whichever song is playing on the radio
Whatever it's
while
called
I'm
from the
writing
moment I start to work on it is
Yeah.
what it sticks with as well, so it's terrible and then I think I'll change it and I never do.
I was once working on a TV show with a well-known British television performer and we had a thing on the wall that was called Black Chip Charm as like a planned trick that we were going to do on the TV show. Black Chip Charm. And then 7.5 months later, when it came to actually filming the show, we looked at the wall and we said, what on earth is Black Chip Charm? None of us could remember what it is. So the top tip is always use descriptive titles.
Yeah.
So presumably this title,
DD
is also an acronym for something.
Yes.
So you won't ever forget what it is.
No,
so
absolutely.
what is it?
Invisible drawing duplication.
Okay, interesting. So this is sort of giving a couple of hints to the direction that perhaps the methodology goes in as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine because there's so much detail in the book and there's so many different approaches to this particular concept. But this, I think the really interesting thing about the IDD...
It's hard to say as well.
It is, yeah. I think the really interesting thing is that it allows you to draw a drawing duplication without actually drawing anything.
Yeah.
I think that's the most backwards, bizarre, counterintuitive thing, and it probably sounds like a riddle if you're listening to this.
It's not meant to be.
But why don't you talk a little bit about what these conditions allow? Because they're kind of unique to this particular approach.
Yeah. So this part of the book really is, in my opinion, I think the rest of it is fantastic and I'm really excited for everyone to read it, but the IDD section is really where it all kind of builds to, and that's kind of towards the end of the book. Especially because some of the things earlier in the book are earlier versions of the IDD. That will all make sense once you've read it.
So we're seeing a kind of evolution
progression
from start to finish.
they're kind of ordered in a way that shows the
I really enjoy that. I like knowing...
works.
Yeah, I like seeing how the material shifts and changes and why as well. I think that's a great way of structuring a book. So, yeah.
So the IDD gives you, like, in strange ways, you can do this over Skype or FaceTime if you want to. That's not really applicable for what I do, but you can.
It's an interesting potential, isn't it? Like I always end up looking at stuff and saying to myself, oh, that could be done over the telephone.
Yeah.
And then I vanish off into some weird fantasy where I'm like having a telephone interview with, with some newspaper, and then I have to do a trick over the interview, otherwise they will be really horrible.
Yeah.
It's never happened to me yet, but it is always good to have a little bank of stuff that could work over the phone or the internet.
And it's kind of fun to mess with friends that already know how you do things.
Right.
But it works in those situations, but the conditions that I'm interested in are as fair as someone goes out of the room or they fly to a different country is an exaggeration.
Well, I mean, technically it's not. It just would take a long time.
It would be a very long effect.
It'd be a very long trick, yeah. Worthy of the good old days shows when they were 7 hours long.
The first act, they draw. Second one I do. So they draw and they can go out of the room or to the other side of the room. Or what is quite good if you're in a casual situation, and this is kind of something I like to carry around on me for those situations as well, is they can go to like the bathroom, or you can go and get another coffee and they draw or something. And then they fold up their picture and they can hold it in their hand as a closed fist, or put it in a pocket or a wallet or a purse, depending on who they are. And then without ever having to peek that drawing, you can commit to your impressions and isolate them for everyone to see. And then both images match. But you do this in such a way that means you never have to secretly peek their information before you apparently draw.
The thing, having had the trick both performed to me and also played around with it since you shared it with me, I think one of the really interesting things here is that it kind of reverse engineers any moment of attention.
Yeah.
So ordinarily in a drawing duplication, you ask the person to make the drawing, and then it goes in the envelope, or you bake it into the loaf of bread, or whatever crazy thing has been sold on last week's DVD.
Yeah.
Some condition happens that prevents you from seeing what's been drawn, and then of course later on you duplicate it, very often after some period of time that allows you to secretly access the information, obviously. In this particular trick, you never actually come near the spectator's drawing at any point.
No.
Equally, the drawing doesn't even actually need to physically exist. It can be a drawing that is only in their mind.
Yeah.
I don't think that would necessarily be the right choice, because I think the trick is better when you have, a side-by-side image.
I tried to kind of stay along the straight line of the traditional drawing duplication, whereby they draw and then you draw. Just because I don't know, part of me thinks maybe if you went too crazy with it and they just imagine drawing, it might seem like something else is going on.
Right.
It could lead them down the right path.
Yeah, also I think there's something very strong theatrically and presentational element of just the side-by-side image.
Yeah.
The idea of like everybody chasing this insane notion of propless mind reading.
Yeah, it doesn't interest me.
Yeah, it doesn't interest me either. Like, I happen to be a mind reader that uses visual aids because I have respect for my audience.
Yeah, my stuff has to work.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But that's kind of the feeling that I have here. This is a propless demonstration of mind reading, because in my mind you're not considering the piece of paper that they draw their image on a prop, because without the paper and the pen they can't make a drawing.
Yeah.
Right? So it's,
Yeah.
But if you are, and certainly I shouldn't have the sort of bombastic approach that is the only way to do it, because I'm sure somebody will come up to you or I at some point in the future and say, I've got this other way of doing it, and we'll love it. So the fact that actually the drawing doesn't even need to be drawn is really interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm aware, if you're listening to this, that it kind of sounds like we're dropping riddles here and leading you around the garden maze, which I suppose in some ways we are, but in other ways, obviously, we need to protect the actual information in the book. For me, the conditions that are existing with this drawing duplication are really interesting. It's also really interesting because it opens up the way that we think about the drawing duplication to a new direction. This isn't a book full of make an impression pad and then do this. This is a different way to go, and I think it's really great. And I wonder, maybe something really useful would be your top 3 tips. So let's imagine that I've just got the book.
Yeah. I've
just finished reading it, and now I can come back to this little recording we're making and get your top 3 tips for making the trick work for real people.
So top 3 tips. First of all, pick your favourite method within the book. Mine is definitely the IDD, which is still hard to say. Make one up, and that will all make sense when you've read it.
And also it's easy to make.
Very easy to make, very simple, and it will last a long time. And this all sounds very cryptic. It's not meant to be, but obviously what's going on. And then just start doing it. Like, once you've read the book, it will all make sense, but you're also kind of, over time, developing this and changing this and enhancing this to work for the people that you perform for the most. So you can kind of make it personal to you and your style and your kind of demographic, which is kind of exciting to me as well, because it's kind of this thing that becomes more about the person performing it than just the trick of guessing. And
right. Well, it's very customizable.
Yeah. But that sounds like an obvious thing to say, but just go and try it, do it somewhere you're comfortable, and I think you'll be excited by the potential of even to the point where you can draw before the spectator. And there's lots of wiggle room to play with, and it all comes down to really how you want to present this.
Right.
Yes. But I don't know if that's top 3 tips or that's just one long sentence. But
I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably the same advice that you'd give for anything, isn't it? Which is the truth. The top 3 tips are: 1, sort of master it intellectually and academically.
Something that would be interesting, if it was a book I'd bought and I was reading it, if it was me and I hadn't written the book, I would make and try each of the things in the order that they're in the book, because then you're seeing how this has developed to become the IDD at the end of the book. And then after that, you've got some kind of really cool and I think really exciting bonuses there's a great idea in there from you. There's an extra thing in there from John Archer that I really like as well. And then there's some other variations on the same principle, but used for kind of walk around, whereby you're predicting things almost, and it goes in a whole different direction. So if you do it in the order that it is in the book, you're going to kind of see in real time how this has developed over time,
right?
To the point where you might be so excited by the method at the end that you come up with something even better than what's in the book.
Well, I mean, let's hope, right?
Like, yeah, and then show it to
show it to us. Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I think that there is the potential that this will certainly open up the doors to a new direction when it comes to things like drawing duplications, and there are, as you've already said, many different potential uses for this concept of the IDD. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if we start to see others developing material with this. As long as they remember where they found it first, I'm more than happy with that. But that seems to be a skill that's less and less in mentalism today, is remembering the credits for things. And that brings us on to an interesting sort of topic here, which is the crediting for the ideas here. Like we look through sort of the history of mentalism and magic, and the core principles have been explored in different ways by different people, beginning with Corinda, and actually even in modern magic and magic without apparatus, there are little kernels of ideas here, but I've never seen it developed in this direction, and that's what I think makes it exciting. So even if you are a really seasoned magician that's been reading, magic books from 500, 600 years ago right the way through to today, it's still something a bit different, a bit new. Yeah, no, I mean, he is. He is.
Reassures me that it is.
Yeah, it's for sure. It's definitely worthy of being added, and I think that's...
And there are credits in the book, which is exciting. Like, as you said, most people probably just flick over that page.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Well, good. So I suppose the end thing is, I should say, I think you should buy it because I think it's good. And I do. I wouldn't sit here and do this.
Thank you.
I've explored it. I've played with it. I'm yet to perform it for real people, but I know that I will at some point.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those really great things, which is I made one up, I put it in a drawer, and I know it's there, ready to go.
Yeah.
And I know that the right time will present itself for me, and it will be great for that process. But I'm certainly excited to do it for real audiences, and having played around with it, sort of got a bunch of new ideas that aren't even in that book yet. So maybe eventually there'll be a little update for people on your mailing list or something.
That would be great.
Where we can add new ideas to it.
Yeah, maybe they can throw some in too once I've read the book and had to play with it for a while.
You get what you put in.
There we go.
You get out what you put in, and other
Jermai's
cliches.
wisdom of the day.
Hashtag Jermai said. This is not just an audio recording. This has been Luke and Chris.
So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for signing up, and see you soon. Goodbye.